A homeless man crashed my wedding ceremony, and when security moved to remove him, my bride stopped them. "Wait," Jade said, staring at the disheveled stranger. "I know you." What she revealed next about this broken man transformed our perfect wedding into something far more meaningful than I could have ever imagined. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more amazing stories every day. Now, let's head back to what was supposed to be the most perfect day of our lives. The morning of my wedding to Jade Richardson dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of golden October sunlight that photographers dream about. Everything was perfect, and I mean everything. The flowers were arranged exactly as Jade had envisioned. The string quartet was tuning their instruments in the corner of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, and the guest list read like a who's who of Chicago's social elite. Jade came from money, old money, the kind that built libraries and had wings of hospitals named after them. Her father, Charles Richardson, owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Chicago, and her mother, Patricia, sat on the boards of every important charity in the city. I, on the other hand, was a middle school history teacher whose biggest claim to fame was winning the district's Teacher of the Year award 2 years running. It should have been intimidating marrying into a family whose wedding budget exceeded my annual salary by a factor of 10, but Jade had never made me feel like anything less than her equal. She was a successful pediatric surgeon who had chosen her profession not because she needed to work, but because she genuinely wanted to save children's lives. That's how we had met. I had brought one of my students to the emergency room after a playground accident, and Jade had been the doctor who not only took excellent care of the boy, but also took the time to calm down his panicked teacher. "You're good with kids," she had said, as we waited for the boy's parents to arrive. "It's not as common as you'd think, especially with middle schoolers. They can smell fear and insincerity from a mile away." 13 years of teaching will either break you or teach you how to connect with them, I had replied. I decided early on that I'd rather be the teacher who believed in them than the one who gave up on them. That conversation had led to coffee, which had led to dinner, which had led to 2 years of the most genuine, supportive relationship I had ever experienced. Jade didn't just tolerate my modest lifestyle. She embraced it. She loved our quiet Friday nights grading papers together, our weekend trips to used bookstores, our shared passion for helping kids who needed extra support. The wedding ceremony was being held at St. Matthew's, a beautiful Gothic church that had been in Jade's family for 3 generations. The reception would follow at the Palmer House, with a guest list of 250 people who represented the intersection of Chicago's educational, medical, and business communities. As I stood at the altar in my rented tuxedo, watching Jade's bridesmaids process down the aisle in their elegant navy blue dresses, I felt like the luckiest man alive. My best man, Jake, leaned over and whispered, "You clean up pretty well for a public school teacher." I whispered back, "Just wait until you see Jade. She's going to take everyone's breath away." The music changed to Wagner's bridal chorus, and every head in the church turned toward the back doors. Jade appeared on her father's arm, and she was absolutely radiant. Her dress was a classic A-line with delicate lace sleeves, her grandmother's pearl necklace at her throat, and her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon. But it was her smile that made my heart skip, pure joy, directed entirely at me. She was halfway down the aisle when it happened. The heavy wooden doors at the back of the church creaked open, and a figure stumbled inside. At first, I thought it might be a late-arriving guest who had gotten lost, but as the figure moved into the light, it became clear that this was not someone who belonged at a Richardson family wedding. The man was probably in his 60s, with long, unkempt gray hair and a beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in months. His clothes were layers of mismatched items, a torn winter coat over what appeared to be multiple shirts, pants that were too big and held up with a piece of rope, and shoes that were more duct tape than leather. He moved with the careful, deliberate steps of someone who is either very drunk or very tired, and he smelled. Even from the altar, I could detect the unmistakable odor of someone who had been living on the streets. A collective gasp went through the congregation. Jade's mother, Patricia, looked like she might faint. Her father's face turned red with embarrassment and anger. The church's security guard, a large man named Marcus, who had been hired specifically to prevent this kind of disruption, began moving toward the intruder. But the homeless man didn't seem to notice the commotion he was causing. His eyes were fixed on Jade, and there was something in his expression, not menace or confusion, but a kind of wonder, as if he were seeing a miracle. Jade had stopped walking. She stood frozen in the middle of the aisle, her bouquet trembling in her hands, staring at the man with an expression I couldn't read. "Sir," Marcus said, his voice firm but not unkind, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a private ceremony." The homeless man didn't resist as Marcus took his arm, but he continued to stare at Jade. "Jade?" he said, his voice hoarse and uncertain. "Jade Richardson? Is that really you?" That's when Jade did something that shocked everyone in the church, including me. She pulled away from her father's arm and took a step toward the homeless man. "Wait," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent church. "Wait, Marcus. Don't take him out." "Jade," her father hissed, "what are you doing? We need to get this man out of here immediately." But Jade wasn't listening to her father. She was staring at the homeless man with growing recognition and something that looked like disbelief. "Mr. Harrison, is that really you?" The homeless man's face crumpled, and tears began streaming down his weathered cheeks. "Hello, Jade. You look beautiful. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have come. I saw the announcement in the paper, and I couldn't help myself. I wanted to see you happy." The church was dead silent. 250 of Chicago's most prominent citizens were watching this surreal scene unfold, and no one knew what to make of it. Jade handed her bouquet to her maid of honor and walked toward the man, her wedding dress rustling against the marble floor. When she reached him, she did something that made several people in the congregation audibly gasp. She hugged him. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I can't believe it's you. I've been looking for you for years." I stood at the altar, completely bewildered, watching my bride embrace a homeless man in the middle of our wedding ceremony. Jake leaned over and whispered, "Do you have any idea what's going on?" I shook my head. Jade had never mentioned anyone named Mr. Harrison, and I couldn't imagine how she knew this man or why she was reacting to him with such emotion. Jade pulled back from the hug and looked at Mr. Harrison with tears in her eyes. "Everyone," she said, turning to address the congregation, "I want you to meet the most important teacher I ever had. This is Mr. Harrison. He saved my life when I was a child." The murmur that went through the church was a mixture of confusion, concern, and curiosity. Jade's parents looked mortified, but Jade seemed oblivious to their embarrassment. Mr. Harrison was my teacher at Lincoln Elementary. He taught me from 3rd grade through 6th grade, and then he mentored me through middle school and high school. I was not an easy child. My parents were always working, always traveling, and I was angry and acting out. I was failing everything, getting into fights, and most of the adults in my life had basically given up on me. She looked back at Mr. Harrison,
who was standing there in his ragged clothes, tears still streaming down his face. But Mr. Harrison never gave up on me. He saw something in me that no one else saw. He stayed after school to help me with my homework for years. He ate lunch with me when the other kids wouldn't sit with me. He called my parents and convinced them to get me into counseling. He encouraged me to take advanced science classes when everyone said I wasn't smart enough. He wrote recommendation letters for my college applications. He literally shaped every important decision I made about my education and my career. I felt my throat tighten as I began to understand what was happening. This wasn't just a random homeless man who had wandered into our wedding ceremony. This was someone who had played a crucial role in making Jade the woman I fell in love with. "Mr. Harrison," Jade said, turning back to him, "what happened to you? I tried to find you when I graduated from medical school. I wanted to thank you, to tell you how much you meant to me. The school said you had left, but no one knew where you went." Mr. Harrison's voice was barely above a whisper when he answered, "I lost everything, Jade. My wife, she died during childbirth about 12 years ago. The baby didn't make it either. I lost them both in one night. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't go back to teaching, couldn't be around children anymore. It hurt too much. I lost my job, my house, everything. I've been living on the streets for the past 10 years. The church was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Jade's hand flew to her mouth, and fresh tears began flowing down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I had no idea."
"Don't be sorry," Mr. Harrison said, managing a weak smile. "Look at you. Look at what you've become. You're a doctor, you're saving children's lives, you're getting married to someone who clearly loves you very much. You turned out exactly like I always knew you would. You became everything I dreamed you could be." Jade looked back at me, then at her parents, then at the congregation of confused and uncomfortable wedding guests. I could see her making a decision, and knowing Jade as I did, I knew it was going to be something that would surprise everyone. "Mr. Harrison," she said, "would you like to stay for the ceremony? Would you like to see me get married?" The collective intake of breath from the congregation was audible. Jade's mother looked like she was about to have a heart attack, and her father's face had gone from red to purple. "Jade," Patricia said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." But Jade wasn't backing down. "No, Mom, Mr. Harrison is staying. In fact," she paused, and I could see her mind working. "Mr. Harrison, would you do me the honor of walking me down the aisle?" The question hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Charles Richardson's face went white, and several people in the congregation actually stood up, as if they were preparing to leave. "Jade," her father said, his voice dangerously quiet, "I think you're having some kind of emotional breakdown. This man is clearly disturbed, and he's disrupting our wedding." "He's not disrupting anything," Jade said firmly. "He's the reason I'm the person I am today. He's the reason I became a doctor, the reason I learned to care about other people, the reason I know how to persevere when things get difficult. He spent 8 years of his life believing in me when no one else would. If anyone deserves to walk me down the aisle, it's him." Mr. Harrison was shaking his head. "Jade, I can't. Look at me. I'm filthy. I smell. I don't belong here. This is your special day, and I've already ruined it." "You haven't ruined anything," Jade said. "But you're right about one thing. We need to get you cleaned up." She turned to Marcus, the security guard, who had been standing there looking completely bewildered by the turn of events. "Marcus," she said, "is there somewhere in the church where Mr. Harrison could wash up and change clothes?" "Jade," her mother said, her voice rising to near hysteria, "what are you doing? We have 250 guests waiting, we have photographers, we have a reception planned, and we're going to have all of those things," Jade said calmly. "But first, we're going to take care of Mr. Harrison."
She looked at me, and I could see the question in her eyes. She was asking for my support, asking me to trust her judgment, even though this was completely insane by any conventional standard. I thought about the woman I had fallen in love with, the doctor who stayed late to comfort scared children and their families, the person who volunteered at homeless shelters on her days off, the woman who had chosen a career in service rather than taking the easy path her family's wealth could have provided. This wasn't out of character for Jade. This was exactly who she was. I stepped down from the altar and walked over to where Jade and Mr. Harrison were standing. "Mr. Harrison," I said, extending my hand, "I'm David, Jade's fiancé. It's an honor to meet you." Mr. Harrison looked at my outstretched hand as if he couldn't believe I was offering it to him. When he finally shook it, his grip was weak and his hand was rough with calluses and dirt. "You don't understand," he said. "I shouldn't be here. I just wanted to see her for a minute, to see that she was happy. I never meant to cause all this trouble." "You're not causing trouble," I said. "You're family, and family belongs at weddings." I turned to address the congregation, most of whom were still sitting in stunned silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "we're going to take a short intermission. Please feel free to step outside, get some fresh air, and we'll resume the ceremony in about 30 minutes. The next half hour was a whirlwind of activity that I'm sure none of the wedding guests had ever experienced before. Marcus, who turned out to be much more resourceful than his job description suggested, found a small bathroom in the church basement where Mr. Harrison could wash up. Jade's maid of honor, Sarah, who was also a doctor and had seen her share of difficult situations, helped coordinate the effort. Jake, my best man, surprised everyone by producing a spare shirt and tie from his car. "I always keep emergency clothes," he explained. "You never know when you're going to spill something on yourself at a wedding." One of Jade's cousins, who was about Mr. Harrison's size, contributed a jacket. Another guest offered a pair of shoes. Within 20 minutes, we had assembled a complete outfit that, while not exactly formal wear, was clean and respectable. The transformation was remarkable. Once Mr. Harrison had washed his face and hands, combed his hair, and put on clean clothes, you could see the man he had once been. He was still thin and weathered, but there was dignity in his posture and intelligence in his eyes that had been hidden beneath the grime and desperation of life on the streets. "I don't know how to thank you," he said to Jade as we prepared to resume the ceremony. "I don't know why you're doing this for me." "Because you did it for me first," Jade said. "Because when I was a lost little girl who nobody believed in, you saw something worth saving. Because you spent 8 years of your life making sure I knew I was capable of great things. Because you taught me that everyone deserves kindness and everyone deserves a second chance." When we returned to the sanctuary, about half the guests had left. Jade's parents were among those who remained, though they looked like they were attending a funeral rather than a wedding. But the people who stayed, mostly Jade's colleagues from the hospital, my family and fellow teachers, and a surprising number of Jade's extended family, seemed genuinely moved by what they had witnessed. The ceremony that followed was unlike any wedding I had ever attended. When the minister asked who was giving Jade away, Mr. Harrison stepped forward with a dignity that belied his circumstances. "I am," he said, his voice clear and strong. "I have had the privilege of watching this remarkable woman grow from a troubled child into someone who saves lives every day. She has become everything I always knew she could be, and it is my honor to entrust her to someone who clearly loves her as much as she deserves to be loved." He placed Jade's hand in mine, and I could see that his eyes were filled with tears of joy rather than sorrow. The rest of the ceremony proceeded normally, but there was an emotional weight to it that hadn't been there before.
When Jade and I exchanged vows, we weren't just promising to love each other. We were acknowledging the people and experiences that had shaped us into the people we had become. Dated, Jade said during her vows, you've shown me what it means to be loved unconditionally. But you've also shown me, today, what it means to be married to someone who understands that love isn't just about the two of us. It's about the community we build together, the people we choose to include in our family, and the way we treat the most vulnerable among us. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, the applause was thunderous, not just for our marriage, but for the unexpected lesson in compassion that had unfolded before everyone's eyes. At the reception, Mr. Harrison sat at the head table, looking overwhelmed but grateful. Jade made sure he was fed, that he felt included in the conversations, that he understood he was truly welcome. Several guests approached him throughout the evening, and I overheard more than one conversation about job opportunities and housing assistance. "You know," Jake said to me as we watched Jade dancing with Mr. Harrison, "this is either the craziest wedding I've ever been to or the most beautiful. I can't decide which." Both. Definitely both. During the father-daughter dance, Jade danced with both her biological father and Mr. Harrison. Charles Richardson had thawed considerably over the course of the evening, especially after hearing more details about the role Mr. Harrison had played in Jade's education and development. "I had no idea," he said to me during a quiet moment. "Jade never told us how much this man meant to her. I feel ashamed of how I reacted." She was protecting him. She knew you wouldn't understand, and she was probably right. But look at him now. Look at how happy she is. As the evening progressed, something beautiful began to happen. The guests who had stayed weren't just tolerating Mr. Harrison's presence, they were embracing it. Dr. Violet Williams, the chief of pediatrics at Jade's hospital, spent 20 minutes talking to him about educational philosophy. My principal, Mrs. Gomez, was fascinated by his stories about teaching in the inner city. Even Jade's grandmother, a formidable woman in her 80s, was charmed by his gentle manner and obvious intelligence. "You know," Jade's grandmother said to me later, "that man has more class in his little finger than half the people who left tonight. Jade chose well." During the toasts, Jade surprised everyone by asking Mr. Harrison to speak. He stood up slowly, clearly nervous about addressing such a distinguished crowd, but when he began to talk, his voice was steady and his words were profound. "I've been a teacher for most of my adult life, and I've learned that the greatest privilege of teaching isn't imparting knowledge. It's witnessing transformation. Jade came to me as an angry, confused little girl who had been told she wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough, wasn't worth the effort. But I saw something different. I saw curiosity. I saw compassion. I saw a fierce intelligence that just needed someone to believe in it." He paused, looking directly at Jade, who was crying openly now. "I watched her grow from a child who couldn't read at grade level to a young woman who graduated valedictorian of her high school class. I watched her go from someone who got into fights on the playground to someone who spent her weekends volunteering at animal shelters. I watched her transform from a girl who thought she was worthless into a woman who saves children's lives for a living."
His voice broke slightly, and he had to pause to compose himself. "People have asked me tonight what happened to me, how I ended up where I am. The truth is, when I lost my wife and baby, I lost my faith in everything, in God, in goodness, in the point of caring about anything. I couldn't bear to be around children anymore, because every child I saw reminded me of the one I would never get to hold. I gave up on teaching, on life, on myself. The room was completely silent, everyone hanging on his words. But seeing Jade tonight, seeing what she's become, seeing the life she's built and the love she's found, it reminds me that the work we do as teachers, as parents, as human beings who care about each other, it doesn't end when we think it does. The love we give, the faith we show in others, it keeps growing and spreading long after we're gone from their lives. He raised his glass of water, he had declined alcohol, and looked around the room. To Jade and David, may your marriage be a testament to the power of love to transform lives, to heal wounds, and to create families that extend far beyond blood relations. And may you always remember that the greatest gift you can give each other, and the world, is the belief that everyone is worth saving. The applause that followed was unlike anything I had ever heard at a wedding. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was the sound of people who had been genuinely moved, who had witnessed something that changed their understanding of what was possible. As the evening wound down, Jade and I found ourselves sitting with Mr. Harrison at a quiet table, away from the remaining guests who were still dancing and celebrating. "Mr. Harrison," Jade said, "I have a proposition for you." He looked at her warily. "Jade, you've already done more for me tonight than I could ever repay." "David and I have been talking," she continued, "and we want to help you get back on your feet. We want to help you find housing, get you into some programs that can provide support, maybe even help you get back into teaching, if that's something you'd want to do." Mr. Harrison's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't know if I could teach again. I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You don't have to decide that now," I said. "But you don't have to live on the streets anymore either. We're family now, and family takes care of each other." Over the next several months, Jade and I worked with Mr. Harrison to rebuild his life. We helped him find a small apartment, got him into counseling to deal with his grief and trauma, and connected him with social services that could provide ongoing support. The transformation was gradual but remarkable. As Mr. Harrison began to heal emotionally and physically, the teacher he had once been started to emerge again. He began volunteering at a literacy program for adults, then at an after-school tutoring center. Eventually, he was offered a part-time position at a community college teaching basic education classes to adults who were working toward their GEDs. "I'm not the same teacher I was before," he told us one evening over dinner at our apartment. "I can't pretend that losing my family didn't change me, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the pain I've experienced helps me understand my students in a way I couldn't before." Jade and I had been married for 6 months when she came home from work with news that would change all of our lives again. "I'm pregnant," she said, her face glowing with joy and nervousness.
My first emotion was pure elation, but it was quickly followed by a thought that surprised me. I wanted Mr. Harrison to know. He had become such an important part of our lives, such a central figure in our chosen family, that sharing this news with him felt as important as calling our parents. When we told him, Mr. Harrison's reaction was everything we could have hoped for. He cried, tears of joy this time, and he hugged us both with a strength and enthusiasm that reminded us of the vibrant teacher he was becoming again. "This baby," he said, "is going to be so lucky to have you as parents, and if you'll let me, I'd be honored to be part of his or her life." "We wouldn't have it any other way," Jade said. You're going to be the best honorary grandfather any child could ask for." Our daughter, Grace, was born on a snowy February morning, and Mr. Harrison was one of the first people to meet her. Watching him hold her, seeing the wonder and love in his eyes, I was reminded of Jade's words from our wedding day. Everyone deserves a second chance. Mr. Harrison had lost a family to tragedy, but he had gained a new one through love, forgiveness, and the simple act of showing up when it mattered most. He had taught Jade to believe in herself, and in return, she had taught him to believe in the possibility of healing, of starting over, of finding joy again even after the deepest loss. As I write this, Grace is now 3 years old, and she adores her Grandpa Harrison. He reads to her, teaches her about plants in our garden, and tells her stories about her mommy when she was a little girl. He has become the grandfather he never got the chance to be to his own child, and Grace has become the grandchild who helped him remember that love doesn't end with loss. It just finds new ways to grow. Jade's parents are also more present today. I feel like they try to treat Grace the way they learned Jade would like to have been treated. They are succeeding in their own way. Our wedding day didn't go according to plan. It was messy, unconventional, and probably scandalized half of Chicago's social elite, but it was perfect in all the ways that mattered. It was a day when love triumphed over convention, when compassion overcame judgment, when a family was created not through blood or law, but through the simple recognition that we all need each other, and we all deserve to be seen, valued, and loved. Mr. Harrison crashed our wedding, but in doing so, he completed it. He reminded us that the most important guests at any celebration are the people who helped make us who we are, regardless of their circumstances or social status. He showed us that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or social connections, but in the lives we touch and the love we share. And he taught us that sometimes the most beautiful moments in life come from the most unexpected places, from a homeless man who stumbles into a church, from a teacher who never gave up on a difficult student, from the courage to choose love over fear, inclusion over exclusion, compassion over convention. Our wedding day became a testament to the power of second chances, to the importance of honoring the people who shape us, and to the truth that family is not just about who raised us, but about who we choose to love and who chooses to love us in return.
What an absolutely beautiful story about recognizing the people who truly shaped our lives and the power of second chances. Mr. Harrison's transformation from broken man to beloved family member shows us that it's never too late for redemption. What do you think about Jade's decision to honor her teacher at our wedding? Have you ever had a teacher who changed your life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this incredible story of compassion, family, and second chances, please show your support by hitting that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more amazing stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.